Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Edge Impulse, for having me today. I'm delighted to be here. And thank you to the organizing team for putting together such a broad and diverse, yet very to-the-point lineup of speakers. So thank you. And I love this event. I love it because it's unique on how it brings together disruptive and progressive and creative business thinking with deep and thoughtful cutting-edge technology innovation and conversations. Just a quick few words on my background. I started my career in semiconductor, first as an engineering intern at CERN, the largest European laboratory for particle physics, where I was fortunate and had the opportunity to collaborate on the design of the readout electronics of the Large Hadron Collider project, which was one of the most ambitious and most high-profile scientific projects at that time. From there, I shifted a bit and got into mixed-signal circuit design for my PhD work at Stanford. A to D conversion and data conversion was very popular at that time because on one hand, we had the promise of Moore's law, which was projecting exponential growth and progress, but on the other hand, that only applied to the digitized world, and the world around us, as we all know, is still analog. So all kinds of digitization efforts at that time were getting a lot of attention. But now, with the creation of so much digital data, we had created ourselves a new problem. Wireless connectivity, or connectivity more in general, became a challenge. And so in 2004, my husband and I started a semiconductor company in the wireless connectivity space. Osmo Devices was a semiconductor company. We invented and we commercialized ultra-low power, Wi-Fi-based wireless personal area network connectivity for low-power battery-operated devices. Think mice, keyboards, headphones, remote controls, and then later IoT devices. We standardized the technology within Wi-Fi Alliance as part of the Wi-Fi Direct certification standard, and in late 2012, Atmel, which is now part of Microchip, acquired us as a part of their IoT strategy. And after the acquisition, I changed gear yet again, and I decided to dedicate my time and my energy to an area and a space that I'm personally very passionate about, and where I also felt it would allow me to make a direct and deep human impact. And so that's how I ended up in the digital health space. And in 2016, I started Clue. Clue was a software and AI company. We developed hand gesture recognition technology that allowed us to automatically, so without any user intervention, detect when and how much and how fast and how often someone was eating or drinking from analyzing their hand gestures. So from analyzing the motion sensor data in off-the-shelf wearables like the Apple Watch. Now, capturing and tracking eating behaviors is a critical missing piece in diabetes therapy. And that's how, at the end of 2019, we decided to join forces with Medtronic in a strategic acquisition. Why am I telling you all this? I'm not just showing this slide to tell you my personal journey. I show this slide because it's also representative of a bigger and important trend across the tech industry. For the past couple of decades, we've seen a shift of value capture being pushed up the stack, away from the underlying hardware and components and into the software and the applications. And when it comes to healthcare specifically, we've now entered into an era where the challenges, but also the opportunities, will be in turning the data streams, the abundant streams of digital data that we have, in actionable and meaningful insights for a more patient-friendly, a more personalized, and a more efficacious healthcare delivery system. So value capture is moving up the stack. But there's good news for us here today. It is also moving down to the edge. And I know we have a nice representation from semiconductor here. So what does this mean for your silicon roadmap? I believe it means two things. we need to understand the use cases. We need to understand at a very deep level the needs of the end user. Understand the use case and own it. And then translate that into building what I like to refer to as empathetic silicon. Silicon that is truly attuned to the needs, to the user needs of these high human impact use cases. And secondly, lean into the application. Invest in software modules and SDKs and tools, but also invest in generating those actionable insights locally so that it's easier for developers to bring the solutions to market, and your silicon and your software offering is really end-to-end aligned with the end user in mind. So now let's talk healthcare. It's an incredibly exciting time to be in healthcare. For the first time, we have a computer on the body. We've had sensors, lots of them, and a computer in the car for many years. They gave us data, the data gave us insights, and those insights gave us protection, they gave us safety, they gave us comfort, and they gave us convenience. Yet when it comes to our own health, for the past 200,000 years, or pretty much since the start of humanity, we've been flying blind. Now that is changing, and it's changing fast. Today, we don't only have Apple Watches and Fitbits, but we're starting to see a whole slew of devices in, on, and around the body that are giving us critical health information and that are tracking pretty much every element of our physiology, our behaviors, and even our mental health. We have rings that capture our sleep quality. We have minimally invasives, and as we heard earlier today, even non-invasive devices that can accurately track our blood sugar levels. We have smart pills that can monitor internally the internal reactions with medicine and soon may replace colonoscopies or endoscopies. We have tattoos and smart clothing that can track our vital signs. And we even have invisibles, ambient sensing, like reflections of Wi-Fi signals that can track the progression of Parkinson's disease, or AI-enabled voice analysis that can detect lung infections, neurological disorders, or mental health issues. Think not only about the data, but more importantly, think about the insights we can get from this new category of devices, thanks to the innovation and the progress of machine learning at the edge. And some of these devices are still in research or development. But increasingly, we're seeing these devices coming to market as medical devices, medical-grade devices that have proven their clinical relevance and have withstood the test of regulatory approvals. And those technological breakthroughs, powered by machine learning at the edge, and in many cases accelerated by the pandemic, have now unlocked a fundamental paradigm shift in healthcare. Finally, we're starting to see us moving away from the traditional healthcare model, which is really a sick care model, to the delivery of true healthcare. Healthcare that tracks us 24/7, wherever we are and whatever we're doing. Healthcare that detects something is off way before we feel symptoms or get sick. And healthcare that is deeply attuned to our individual needs. The future of healthcare is real-time and all the time. It is proactive and it's fundamentally personalized. And that future is happening now. So that was also our vision at Clue. Once you have sensors and a computer on the wrist, there is so much more you can do. At Clue, we felt that the wrist was being underutilized. Nobody was looking at the wrist as a generator of data. But what if the wrist can give you insights, valuable insights about your behaviors? What if your wrist can give you that information automatically without requiring any user input? And what if your wrist can give you that information in real time as the behavior is developing? Well, as we found out, it can. So at Clue, we developed a fine motor AI technology, and we discovered that it is indeed possible to extract some very unique, very actionable, and very valuable insights about our doings, all from data generated by the wrist. And as I mentioned before, we started with eating and drinking. We developed a gesture sensing software that allows us to automatically detect when and how much and how often and how fast a user is eating or drinking, all from analyzing the motion sensor data in off-the-shelf wearables. And since the processing was happening locally and in real time, we were able to interact with the user in the moment as the behaviors were developing. Whether that interaction was a gentle nudge to slow down when you were eating faster than usual, or a reminder to stay hydrated throughout the day, or if you were someone living with diabetes, to remind you to take your insulin when you were starting your meal. Now imagine that this same meal signaling technology gets integrated into an artificial pancreas system to turn it into a fully autonomous and personalized closed-loop system that knows when to dose and how much to dose without requiring any inputs from the patient. So the patient can just go about their lives and just eat when they want to eat. Now that is truly a game changer for diabetes therapy. That was the vision behind Clue, but it was also that shared vision that led us to join forces with Medtronic in 2019. When people say digital health, they oftentimes think mobile app. I think that's a misnomer. Digital health, to me, has 4 critical components. It starts with the sensors. The sensors need to be reliable, they need to be accurate, and preferably, they need to be very low power. The sensors give us data, but not just any kind of data. The sensors give us objective data, something we can never get from self-reporting. But it's not until we apply math and machine learning and AI that we actually get the insights and can turn those data streams into a meaningful digital biomarker. And then finally, we have to integrate that digital biomarker or those digital biomarkers seamlessly into clinical pathways. And that 4th step, unfortunately, is oftentimes the most difficult. And it's where we see most companies struggle or stumble. It's difficult because it requires multidisciplinary collaboration. We as technologists have to sit down and listen and work with the other stakeholders, the clinical experts, the providers, the payers, the regulatory systems and regulatory agencies, and finally, last but not least, the patient. But it's not until we bring those 4 factors together that we have all the attributes necessary to launch a successful digital health solution. And let me share a couple of factors that I personally have found helpful in building a successful digital health company. First, and this has been mentioned by others before, solve a real problem. Start with the problem, start with the unmet need, understand your problem statement, and work your way backwards. Start with a problem, then think what insights do I need to be able to solve that problem. Once you know the insights, think what data streams would I be able to use to actually create these insights? And then finally, what is the hardware? What are the sensors I need to be able to get those data? We started Clue with a very strong and deep and personal connection with the pain point of meal management in diabetes therapy. That was our North Star throughout the whole journey of Clue. Secondly, keep it simple. So often we see engineers and even business leaders feel an urge to solve all problems with AI. They're using AI like a hammer looking for nails. Certain problems, and a lot of problems, need complex neural networks, AI, and machine learning to solve the problem. And we've seen many of these great examples here. But there's other problems that actually can just as well be solved with simple math or rules-based logic. So I always encourage you to think carefully, and as you're deciding on your method, be very intentional and thoughtful. Show that it works. And with that, I'm not talking about that the hardware is performing to spec or that your code is running bug-free. Show that it works clinically. Provide the evidence base. Invest in actually demonstrating that what you're building is having the human impact it was intended for. This can be challenging at times, but don't be afraid to look for partners. We at Clue had a terrific partnership with Stanford School of Medicine, and together we were able to demonstrate that our solution could deliver significant reduction in hemoglobin A1c. And that brings me to my final point, collaborate. The human body is extremely complex. Healthcare and the healthcare ecosystem is even more complex. So don't try to go it alone. We're still operating too much in silos. Identify what your core competency is. Excel at it, be the best at it, but then seek partners to help fill out the missing pieces of the puzzle. We haven't talked much about regulatory yet, and it is an important piece of bringing a digital health solution to market. Regulatory pathways can be complex, they can be intimidating, but it's something every digital health company at some point in their life cycle will have to go through. At a 10,000-foot level, it comes down to two basic questions. Is my product used for a medical purpose? If so, you'll likely have to go through some kind of a regulatory pathway. And the second question, can a malfunction of my product cause harm to the individual? This is a more subtle question. And depending on the degree of harm it can cause, you'll find yourself in a different classification. The class 1 devices pose the least risk to the individual, and therefore the process is pretty lightweight, it's pretty easy, it's pretty fast. Class 3 devices, on the other hand, like the artificial pancreas system that I was talking about just earlier, impose a much higher risk to the patients, in some cases even death. And so naturally, those will be subject to more stringent and a harder bar from a regulatory approval standpoint. In general, general wellness and low-risk applications are typically not actively regulated. This is one of the reasons why we've seen such a proliferation of consumer health applications in the past few years. That has been great, it has been needed. Unfortunately, some of these applications have failed to pass the clinical relevance test. And so that has been backfiring a little bit on the reputation of the industry. As you're developing solutions, especially if they involve software, it will be important to understand the difference between, am I developing a mobile medical application, or am I developing software as a medical device? This largely depends on the platform on which you'll be rolling out the software to the patients. And finally, the regulatory pathways are a work in progress. The FDA, the agency, is still trying to figure out what the right way is to regulate these AI-enabled devices, which have very different characteristics from what they're used to for the many, many years that came before. There is some resources, some good resources available on the website. The FDA is also extremely approachable, and I would definitely encourage everybody who is developing a medical-grade solution to reach out to the FDA and help them help you, or ask them to help you with this regulatory pathway. A lot has been said already today about the benefits of HML in many, many applications. I will summarize it that for digital health, HML brings peace of mind. And to say it with a patient voice, I need my therapy to work without interruption and with no delays. I am worried that my personal health information will be stolen or lost. So privacy and keeping certain information local can be really, really important. And finally, I don't want to have to think about having to charge my devices. I would like to leave you today with two thoughts. First one is to dare to think exponentially. Things are changing, and they're changing fast. we won't experience 100 years of progress in the 21st century. It will be more like 20,000 years of progress at today's rate. And finally, I would like to leave you with a quote from Dr. Sinclair from his book, Lifespan, Why We Age and Why We Don't Have to. By the way, a book I would recommend to everybody in the audience interested in health to read. Prolonged vitality, meaning not just more years of life, but more active, healthy, and happy ones is coming. It is coming sooner than most people expect. By the turn of the next century, 120 years of age might not be an outlier, but an expectation. So much so that we won't even call it longevity. We will simply call it life. Many of us in the audience today will have the opportunity to blow the 120 candles on their birthday cake and see their great-great-grandchildren grow up. But it will require all of us to think bold and act bold, while at the same time being responsible and thoughtful in the conversations around societal and ethical issues that this innovation will undoubtedly provoke. Thank you.